Let's dive into the headlines of the day, though, first, and we start with Adrian Peterson. The NFL will conduct Adrian Peterson's grievance hearing for reinstatement a week from yesterday. So he will not be participating on Sunday as the Minnesota Vikings go on the road to take on the Chicago Bums. And this game is going to be very interesting without Adrian Peterson, considering the pending possible reinstatement, because if the Vikings do pick up the win, and of course that's an if, it's looking better the way that the Bears have played defensively over the last 2 weeks, giving up 100-plus points. But in that division, you get to 5-5, and the Bears are gone. You're fighting now uphill against the Lions and the Packers. But either way, a big game for the Vikings on Sunday. Adrian Peterson will not be a part of it. But back to his grievance hearing coming up next Monday, there will be an arbiter involved, and they'll conduct the hearing. Representatives from the NFLPA told ESPN that they are unaware of a date being set. They hadn't confirmed it yet, but according to multiple sources, it will occur next Monday. Now, the NFLPA filed the expedited grievance with the NFL on Monday to reinstate Peterson, citing, quote, explicit language in a signed agreement from September 18th when the Minnesota Vikings star was placed on a special commissioner's exempt list after his indictment on felony child abuse charges. Now, I would lead into this and say, if there is a, quote, explicit language in a signed agreement, did the NFL basically get into bed with the devil on this one? Did they set up a situation where they could allow a really unsavory character like Adrian Peterson back solely on the premise that they were going to put him on the exempt list back then? We all thought all along that Adrian Peterson agreed to go on the exempt list because he was going to get paid. But if there was language within that agreement that basically expedited the process of him getting on that list on the premise that he would be reinstated after his legal troubles were over, if it was a plea, a conviction, or if he was acquitted. And I'm very interested to see what this explicit language is in this signed agreement from September 18th. Now, I think, this is just a hunch, I'm thinking that Adrian Peterson will be reinstated before the end of the season. And that doesn't mean that he goes right back to the Vikings, because the Vikings once again have to make a statement, once again have to make a decision. And if it was up to me and I was running that business, I'd say we were fine without you. We'll be fine without you in the future. You're a 30-plus-year-old running back, and you're a bad dude. You're not a good father. You're not a good person. We don't want you to be a part of our organization. That's what I would do. But the Vikings want to win games. And in the context of this season, I don't think Adrian Peterson's washed up by any sort of the imagination. Next year, down the road, are you going to pay a 30-plus-year-old running back, whether you're the Vikings or others, the kind of money that AP wants? Of course, that's going to be determined in the future. But in the moment, I look at it and I say, not a good father, not a good dude, don't want him a part of my team, even though teammates want him back. That's not that's not always the pulse that you want. Oh, well, the team wants it back. Of course they do. They want to win games. But for the betterment of your organization, you don't put a child abuser back on your roster. You just don't. You stay away from it. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see what the NFL decides next Monday, and ultimately what the Minnesota Vikings decide after that. At some point, the ball is going to be in the court of the Minnesota Vikings, and they're going to have to make a decision. We'll preview that Bears-Vikings game throughout the week as well. Tomorrow, Brian Robinson joins us, Minnesota Vikings defensive end, and he's always been great at answering some of the tough questions. We'll throw some at him, and if he says he'd like to see Adrian Peterson back, we'll ask him some questions as a follow-up to sort of get some context there, because the one thing about Brian Robinson that I know is true, he understands the business of the National Football League, and business will be affected if Adrian Peterson returns or doesn't return. So we'll see, because remember, all that sponsorship money helps pay those big salaries that these players are getting paid, and if those sponsorship dollars go away, the organization has to find another way to subsidize those dollars. And I think a lot of sponsors will leave the Minnesota Vikings if Adrian Peterson comes back, including one of their biggest in Radisson hotels. Remember, they announced Adrian Peterson was going to be back with the Radisson backdrop, and within hours, their executives were like, we're done with you guys. Until you guys get rid of Adrian Peterson, we're done with you. That's a big sponsor. It is.